My dream wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. For months, I had imagined every detail: the perfect dress, the beautiful venue overlooking the sea, the smiling faces of family and friends gathered to celebrate our love. I was convinced that nothing could go wrong. After all, I had chosen my fiancé because I believed he was the one: honest, loving, and devoted. But on that day, everything changed in a way I never saw coming. The morning of the wedding was filled with excitement and nerves. As I sat getting ready with my bridesmaids, my heart swelled with happiness. The sun was shining, the flowers were in full bloom, and the air buzzed with anticipation. My fiancé called to check on me, telling me how much he loved me and how he couldn't wait to see me walk down the aisle. His voice was warm and reassuring, and I believed every word. The ceremony began beautifully. Walking down the aisle, I caught glimpses of loved ones smiling, and then my fiancé's face, beaming with joy. But just as the officiant was about to begin the vows, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Suddenly, a woman I didn't recognize pushed through the crowd, her eyes fierce and voice loud enough for everyone to hear. She announced herself as my fiancé's ex and proceeded to reveal a secret I was utterly unprepared for: he had been having an affair for months leading up to our wedding. Shock froze me in place. The room fell silent except for her accusations, which seemed to echo off the walls. My fiancé's face went pale, and he struggled to respond, but the damage was done. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. How could I have been so blind? The man I trusted, the man I was about to marry, had been living a double life right under my nose. The aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and heartbroken all at once. My dream wedding was no longer about love and commitment. It had turned into a nightmare of lies and deceit. Friends and family were stunned, and I could see the questions and judgments in their eyes. I wanted to disappear, to escape the pain and confusion that engulfed me. But as the initial shock wore off, I realized I had to face the truth. My fiancé's betrayal was not just a secret kept from me, it was a fundamental breach of trust that changed everything between us. I questioned everything about our relationship: the moments we shared, the promises he made, the future I had envisioned. It was like my whole world had been built on a lie. In the days that followed, I struggled to make sense of what had happened. I confronted him, demanding answers, desperate to understand why he had chosen to deceive me. His apologies felt hollow, and I couldn't shake the feeling that his betrayal went deeper than just the affair. It was a sign that our foundation was flawed. I found myself grappling with anger and sorrow, and yet, amidst the pain, I discovered a strength I didn't know I had. I realized that I deserved honesty, respect, and love, not secrets and betrayal. Ending the relationship was one of the hardest decisions I ever made, but it was also the first step toward healing. My wedding day may have been destroyed, but it didn't destroy me. It forced me to reevaluate what I wanted from life and love, and it taught me the importance of trusting my instincts and valuing my worth. Moving forward won't be easy, but I am determined to find happiness on my own terms, free from deception and pain. Looking back, I see that the nightmare I endured was also a wake-up call, a painful but necessary turning point that led me towards self-discovery and empowerment. My dream wedding didn't go as planned, but my life is still mine to write. And this time, I will make sure the story is one of truth, strength, and hope. The days after that disastrous wedding were some of the hardest I've ever faced. Friends and family tried to comfort me, but nothing seemed to ease the ache inside. I felt a constant swirl of emotions: anger at my fiancé for his betrayal, sadness for the life I thought we'd build together, and confusion about how to move forward. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I barely recognized, someone who had been shattered by the very person she trusted most. What hurt the most wasn't just the affair itself, but the fact that he had hidden it from me for so long. We had made plans, dreamed of a future, and yet all along, he was living a secret life. It made me question everything I thought I knew about love and commitment. How could someone be so close and yet so far away at the same time? I remember nights spent lying awake, replaying every conversation and moment, trying to find signs I had missed. But hindsight was cruel, and no amount of analysis could change what had happened. The betrayal cut deep, but slowly, I began to understand that my worth wasn't tied to his actions or his mistakes. I was more than a victim of his lies. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing. I sought therapy to help process the pain and rebuild my sense of self. It wasn't easy. Some days felt like taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. But bit by bit, I started to reclaim my identity outside of the relationship that had defined me for so long. My support system became my lifeline. Close friends reminded me that I wasn't alone and that I deserved better than what I had experienced. Family members stood by me, offering love without judgment, helping me see that this betrayal did not diminish who I was. I also made the conscious decision to forgive, not for his sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger and bitterness only kept me trapped in the past. Forgiveness was a way to release the weight of what happened and open myself up to new possibilities. It didn't mean forgetting or excusing the betrayal, but rather choosing to let go of the pain's hold over my life. As time passed, I began to rebuild my life with a clearer vision of what I wanted. I rediscovered passions and hobbies I had set aside and started exploring new interests. I surrounded myself with people who uplifted me and distanced myself from negativity. Slowly, my confidence returned, and with it, a hope for the future. Looking back now, I realized that my dream wedding being destroyed was the catalyst for an unexpected transformation. It forced me to confront uncomfortable truths but also led me to a deeper understanding of myself. I learned to value honesty above appearances, to trust my instincts, and to prioritize my happiness. I don't know what the future holds, and I'm okay with that. I'm no longer defined by the pain of that day but by the strength I found in its aftermath. My story is still being written, and I am determined to make the next chapters ones of healing, growth, and love, the love that begins with myself. Rebuilding my life after such a profound betrayal wasn't simple. The shadow of that day lingered longer than I expected, creeping into moments when I least wanted it to. Sometimes, I'd catch myself second-guessing my worth, wondering if I could ever trust again. But each time those doubts surfaced, I reminded myself of the courage it took just to walk away and start anew. I poured my energy into self-care and rediscovery. I reconnected with friends I hadn't spoken to in years, joined new social groups, and even traveled to places I'd always dreamed of visiting. These experiences weren't about distraction, they were about reclaiming my joy and learning that life still held beauty, even after heartbreak. One of the hardest lessons was learning to trust again. Trust isn't given lightly after betrayal. It has to be earned through consistent actions and honesty. But I refused to let fear dictate my future. I made a promise to myself, when the time came to open my heart again, I would do so cautiously but without closing it off completely. Interestingly, the ordeal also opened my eyes to the importance of communication and transparency in relationships. I realized that no matter how perfect something seems on the surface, it's the unseen cracks that matter most. Now, I prioritize honesty not just from others but from myself. I ask difficult questions and expect genuine answers because I deserve nothing less. My family and friends have been pillars of strength throughout this journey. Their unwavering support reminded me that love, in its purest form, is about acceptance and loyalty. In their presence, I found solace and the motivation to keep moving forward. Looking back, that ruined wedding day was a turning point, painful but necessary. It stripped away illusions and forced me to confront reality, no matter how uncomfortable. But in doing so, it also gave me the chance to rebuild a life rooted in authenticity and self-respect. Now, I am grateful for the lessons learned, for the strength discovered, and for the hope that carries me forward. My dream wedding may have been destroyed, but my life, my real life, is just beginning. And this time, I will write it on my own terms, with honesty, courage, and love guiding every step. There were moments when I wondered if I would ever fully move past the shadow of that day. Even when time passed, certain triggers like hearing a song we had once loved or seeing couples walking hand in hand would send waves of pain crashing over me. But I refused to let those moments define me. Instead, I chose to see them as reminders of how far I had come and the strength I had gained. I also realized that healing is not a linear process. There were days when I felt like I was making progress, and others when the grief and anger would resurface unexpectedly. I learned to be patient with myself, to allow the emotions to flow without judgment, and to seek support when I needed it most. One thing that helped tremendously was writing. I started journaling my thoughts, pouring out the confusion, hurt, and hope onto the pages. Writing became a way to process what I was feeling and to keep track of my growth. Sometimes I'd look back at earlier entries and marvel at the distance I had traveled from despair to determination, from brokenness to resilience. With time, I began to open myself up to love again, but with a wiser heart. I no longer sought perfection or fairy tale romance. Instead, I looked for honesty, respect, and shared values. I realized that true love isn't about flawless beginnings but about choosing each other every day, even when it's difficult. Rebuilding trust in myself was perhaps the most important part of my journey. I had to learn to listen to my intuition and stand firm in my worth, so I wouldn't be blind to red flags or willing to settle for less than I deserved. This self-trust became the foundation for all my future relationships and decisions. My family's unwavering support played a huge role in my recovery. They reminded me of my worth, encouraged me to pursue my dreams, and held me up when I felt like falling apart. Their love was a constant reminder that I was never alone and that I was deserving of happiness. Looking back, I understand that my dream wedding being destroyed was a painful but pivotal moment. It forced me to confront uncomfortable truths and rebuild my life on a foundation of honesty and self-respect. Though that day will always carry a sting, it also marked the beginning of a new chapter, one defined not by betrayal, but by resilience, growth, and hope. As I move forward, I carry the lessons of my past with me, but I refuse to be held captive by them. I am more than the pain I endured. I am stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever the future holds with an open heart. My story is still unfolding, and this time, I am writing it with clarity, courage, and love for myself guiding every step. The journey toward healing also taught me about forgiveness, not just forgiving my fiancé for his betrayal, but forgiving myself for any misplaced blame I carried. It's easy to spiral into what-ifs and if-onlys, questioning my decisions or wondering if I missed signs. But holding on to guilt only traps you in the past. Forgiving myself meant acknowledging that I did my best with the information I had and that his actions were his alone. I also discovered the importance of boundaries. After the wedding fiasco, I had to learn to set clear boundaries not only with others but with myself. I needed to protect my emotional well-being and ensure I wouldn't allow anyone else to diminish my sense of self-worth. Saying no when something didn't feel right became an act of self-love rather than confrontation. Friends became my chosen family, especially those who stood by me through thick and thin. They reminded me that I was valued and loved unconditionally. Their support helped me rebuild trust in people and relationships. They also helped me laugh again, bringing lightness back into my life when I needed it most. I took time to explore what I wanted outside of relationships. Who was I, independent of anyone else? I pursued new hobbies, traveled alone, and focused on personal growth. This period of self-discovery was empowering. It helped me realize that my happiness doesn't depend on someone else's approval or presence. I was enough on my own. The experience also gave me a new perspective on love and commitment. I learned that true partnership is built on honesty, respect, and mutual support. It's not just about grand gestures or perfect moments but about everyday choices to be truthful and loyal. I became more cautious, yes, but also more hopeful that real love is possible. Eventually, I opened myself to the idea of love again. But this time, I was wiser. I trusted my intuition and demanded transparency from the start. I was no longer willing to overlook red flags or settle for anything less than genuine respect and care. This time, I was ready to build a relationship on solid ground. My dream wedding may have been destroyed, but it became the catalyst for a stronger, more authentic me. The pain forced me to grow, to re-examine my values, and to prioritize my own well-being. I am grateful for the lessons learned, even if I wish I hadn't needed to learn them the hard way. Now, as I look toward the future, I carry with me a heart that has been broken but also healed. I have learned to love myself fiercely and to protect that love fiercely. And while I may still dream of a future filled with love and happiness, I know that my worth is not dependent on any one person or event. This chapter of my life has ended, but my story continues. It's a story of resilience, self-discovery, and hope. And this time, I am writing it on my own terms, with honesty, strength, and love guiding every step I take. With every step I took forward, I found new layers of strength within myself. I realized that my identity wasn't defined by that one moment or by the actions of someone else. Instead, it was shaped by how I chose to respond, how I chose to grow despite the pain. The healing process wasn't just about moving on, it was about building a life that honored my worth and values. I set new goals for myself, both personal and professional, that reflected who I truly was. I threw myself into projects that fueled my passion and brought me joy, creating a sense of purpose outside of relationships. I also became an advocate for honesty and open communication. Sharing my story with others helped me find connection and support, and in turn, I hoped it might help someone else feel less alone. Vulnerability became a source of strength rather than weakness, and I learned to trust that being authentic was the key to genuine relationships. Romantically, I took things slowly. I gave myself permission to be cautious but also open-hearted. I learned to listen deeply to my intuition and to communicate my needs clearly. When I finally met someone new, it wasn't about rushing or perfection, it was about respect, trust, and the willingness to grow together. Looking back, I know I am not the same person who stood at that altar, betrayed and broken. I am stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, not just to others, but to myself. I've learned that pain can be a teacher, and that even the darkest moments can lead to light if we allow them to. My dream wedding may have been destroyed, but it gave birth to a new dream, a dream of a life built on truth, courage, and self-love. And as I move forward, I carry that dream with me, ready to embrace whatever comes next with an open heart and a fierce spirit. As I continue to rebuild my life, I've come to understand that healing isn't a destination but an ongoing journey. There are days when the weight of the past feels lighter, and days when it feels heavier, but each moment is a testament to my resilience. I've learned to be gentle with myself, recognizing that growth often comes through struggle. I've also realized the importance of surrounding myself with positive influences, people who uplift me, challenge me to be better, and celebrate my successes, no matter how small. These relationships remind me that love and loyalty exist, and that I am worthy of both. In my journey, I discovered a deep well of self-love I hadn't fully tapped into before. Loving myself became the foundation upon which I rebuilt everything else. It wasn't always easy, sometimes it meant confronting insecurities and fears, but it was necessary. This self-love empowered me to set boundaries, demand respect, and pursue happiness on my own terms. Reflecting on that day when my dream wedding turned into a nightmare, I now see it as a turning point, not just an ending, but a beginning. It forced me to face uncomfortable truths, yes, but it also freed me from illusions that no longer served me. It opened the door to a life that's more authentic, more honest, and ultimately more fulfilling. I'm grateful for the strength I've found and the lessons I've learned. My heart is still healing, but it's also hopeful for love, for joy, and for a future shaped by my own choices. This experience, painful as it was, has taught me that I am capable of surviving betrayal, and that I deserve happiness beyond it. So, as I look ahead, I do so with courage. I am no longer defined by that ruined wedding day, but by the woman I've become in its aftermath. My story continues, and I am ready to write the next chapter with honesty, grace, and a heart wide open. This newfound strength also inspired me to help others who might be facing similar struggles. I began volunteering with support groups for people dealing with betrayal and heartbreak, sharing my story and listening to theirs. It was incredibly healing to realize that while our experiences were unique, the feelings of pain, confusion, and hope were universal. Offering empathy and encouragement gave me a sense of purpose beyond my own recovery. I also became more mindful about the kind of relationships I wanted in my life, not just romantic, but friendships and family connections too. I sought out those who valued honesty and kindness, who were willing to hold space for my growth without judgment. I learned that quality always trumps quantity when it comes to relationships. Professionally, I started exploring new paths that aligned with my passions and values. I pursued education and training that I had once shelved due to fear or circumstance. This focus on self-improvement gave me confidence and independence, reminding me that my worth is multifaceted and not solely tied to romantic success. Of course, the scars of betrayal didn't disappear overnight. Sometimes, a sudden reminder, a song, a place, a phrase would trigger a wave of sadness or anger, but I learned healthy ways to cope: journaling, meditation, talking with trusted friends, or simply giving myself permission to feel without judgment. These practices helped me stay grounded and reminded me that healing is a process, not a quick fix. Looking back, I recognize that the nightmare of my dream wedding was a painful catalyst, but also a profound gift. It forced me to reevaluate my life, to rediscover my worth, and to rebuild on my own terms. While I wouldn't wish such pain on anyone, I am grateful for the strength and clarity it ultimately gave me. As I continue forward, I embrace the uncertainty of the future with an open heart. I know that real love is possible, but even if it doesn't come, I have learned to be whole on my own. My story isn't defined by betrayal or heartbreak, but by resilience, growth, and hope. And that is a story worth telling.